Okay, I am going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to today's webinar. We will be talking about the Open Records Portal and training and certification. So let me just jump right in with what the portal is. Right now, the portal is a way for people to request records from any government agency. So right now they can request records from state agencies, counties, municipalities, school districts and charter schools, and transit districts. So the portal also includes a records officer dashboard, and I will show you a little bit of that as we go on. So where this all came from was Senate Bill 70 in the 2014 legislative session. It modified the Open Utah website to include online grammar requests and links to online records. The part of the code, this is the code that was modified, and we're not going to read the whole thing, but this is the part that is applicable here. The Open Utah website will serve as a point of access for government records access and management requests. And this year, 2016, it will be for local agencies, these local agencies. Let me turn on my pointer so you can actually see what I'm pointing to. Right here. Okay. So to give you an overview of the site, just in case you've never been there or seen it, it's at openrecords.utah.gov. And this is what it looks like right now. I do want to draw your attention to the bottom of the screen. We have some links which are to help you out. The Help Center includes some articles about how to do things in the portal, and it includes how to certify through the portal, which I will get to. Also includes some frequently asked questions, so it has some, if you have a lot of questions, we may have the answer there. And then of course it has a page to contact us, which if you do have any questions at any time, please contact us. We want this to be a useful tool for you, not something that is annoying and confusing. So let us know and we will help you through it or figure out a solution. So some of the questions that I am asked the most from records officers is, do I have to use it? The answer is yes, but not entirely, but of course we hope you'll use it. So the yes is that if you do receive a request through the portal, you do need to access it through the portal. So you'll need to go into the portal to see that request. But you don't need to use the portal to respond. So if you have an established process that you go through and you'd rather just stick to that, that's fine. You can answer outside of the portal. And this is the button you will push, which I will show you later as well. But there is a button so you can respond outside of the portal. The next question is, when does the time limit start for answering the request? The time limit starts when you open the request, or if the request stays in there for 10 days without being opened, then it is also considered a denial. But hopefully I will have tracked you down before then. I do keep track of all the requests coming in and make sure that they are answered in a hopefully somewhat timely manner. You'll know if you have a request because we will send you an email notification. So talk to your records officer or records analyst if you have a particular email that you want the notifications to go to, and we can arrange that to set it up however you like. Are the requests public? No, they are not public. Grammar requests in the state retention schedules do have a suggested designation of public, but of course it's up to each agency to classify their own records, and that includes grammar requests, including the ones that are on the portal. So right now, only the requester, the records officer, and the web admin can see the requests. They're not public for anyone to see. We do also discourage requesters from including sensitive information. The requests are not kept forever. We do follow the state schedule, 1-64, and requests will be deleted after 2 years. We haven't actually started because we haven't been up and running for 2 years, but we will begin that next year. And can people abuse the system? The answer is not easily. Requests can only be sent to one agency at a time. And if you do think that someone is spamming the system, then please let us know so that we can look into that. One question that I've been asked recently is how to verify someone's identity. So if you need to give records to someone online, how do you make sure it's really them? We don't actually have a specific way that we recommend people to do that. It's kind of up to you and your agency to set whatever guidelines you would like to set. So if you have a particular process right now for verifying ID, you can just keep using that. That's great. Or make some new guidelines. Some things that we have thought of or people have suggested is a photocopy of the ID, which you can upload to the portal. And again, this may not be substantial for your needs, so use caution. Or you could require ID in person. Or if you have a specific form that you need signed, you can have people do that and upload that. And then, of course, you can do a digital signature on a PDF. Do you need to create an account? Yes, you do need to create a Utah account if you don't already have one. You can use the account that you use for the public notice website if you post there. It's the same login. And the portal will guide you through the setup process if you don't have one already. It's pretty easy, just like signing up for any other website. Some tips on signing up, hopefully to make it easiest for you, is to use the same email that we have on file. That's the one we send emails to. If you're not sure what one that is, you can contact your analyst and they will let you know. We do recommend using a specific work email address, not a generic work email, because we have a couple different factors that are connected to that. So if you certify, it's connected to your email, and if you log in, it's connected to your email. If you're not sure what emails are connected to your Utah account, you can go to login.utah.gov and see what emails you have associated with your account. And again, if you do have any questions, let me know. We may be able to walk you through it. We may have to send you to the Department of Technology Services, but we can figure it out and find the answer. So let me show you how the portal works. Very simple. The requester finds the agency that they're looking for. They submit a request. The agency receives a notification and responds to the request. That's obviously oversimplified. So the requester comes here to our homepage, clicks on any one of the buttons to browse the agencies. This is what that page looks like. And here's a close-up of one of the agencies. So you see the information on there. There's the records officer and the agency information. And then in order to actually submit a request, the requester just comes up here and clicks the Request Records button. Yep, there it is. And then they will come to this form. This is the request form. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail. It's pretty much just like the paper one that we have online. So I do want to point out that we do tell people, please do not submit any confidential information, such as social security number or account numbers. We've already had those submitted on the portal, but we do put this here to hopefully discourage that sort of thing. And so if it's personal information or private or protected records that they are requesting, they can state here that they're the subject of the record or authorized representative. We also have a place where they can upload documents if you need a particular form or power of attorney. Here they can specify whether they want to view the records or receive a notification if it's going to be a certain amount, or of course if they want a fee waiver, which is our most popular choice. And if they would like an expedited response, they can state that here as well. At the bottom, you'll see we have the submit, and they can also submit and upload a document, either one. And we do state that GRAMA requests are public information. We just put that there as a safeguard and to discourage people from submitting sensitive information. Again, these are not public on the portal. They're not visible to the public. Let me show you where you will be working and spending most of your time. And that is here in the Records Officer dashboard. So this is where you see all your requests. You log in and you can click on dashboard and it will take you here. I see all of the requests that come in, so you can see I see all of those, but you will just see the requests for your agency. Once you click on a request, you will be brought to this point where you see all the details of the request. And I'm going to go through this screen kind of in depth and show you what the screen has on it, just so you are able to know what you're looking at. So at the top, you see the title of the request, the due date, the total fee, and the status. This fee will change as you add fees to it, and I will show you that a little bit later on. Underneath that information, you have the description, which is usually a little bit longer than 2 lines. This one was a test request. Then if there is any restricted information, it shows up here. If they wanted a fee waiver, oh, I have a circle on this. If they wanted a fee waiver, that'll show up here as well. And if they request an expedited response, that'll show up here as well. Then these 3 buttons down here, oh no, the link. I forgot the link. The little more detail link. That will show you the requester's name, email, and exactly when the request came in and when it was open, and some other just details about the request. To print the request, you can press the print request button and you can print to a printer or PDF. To close the request, you click this button, and I will talk more about closing the request in just a minute. And then again, if you want to respond outside of the portal, you can click this button and it will automatically close the request so that you can respond outside of the portal. You can click the print request at any point, whether the request is open or closed. That's all the information about the request up top. Underneath that, you can see the different request portions. So if they did submit an expedited request or a fee waiver, you'll see those here because you need to answer them separately from the main request. And then once you click on one of those request portions, the details of that portion will show up underneath. One of the coolest things about the portal is this little button here that divides a request. So if you get a records request that you need to approve part of and deny part of, or it's actually 2 requests in one, or you just need to work on one part, you can divide that into separate parts and then answer each one separately. And you do that here just by clicking on divide request into parts. Down at the bottom, this is where all the magic happens. This is the where you'll approve it or deny the request. So I'm going to go through each one of these buttons and show you what you will see and how you can respond to the request and all the tools you have. So first you have the approve. When you approve a request, you can input a message here. Any approval or denial that you do will automatically send an email to the requester, which will include whatever message you write in here. And you have several different options for replying. You can email them the records, mail them, all this stuff. You can upload files here. And you will notice at the bottom, there are 2 buttons, approve and close. The one that you want to click on is approve and close. And let me tell you a little bit more about that. So when you close, if a request isn't closed in 10 days, then our system considers it a denial, and then it sends out a message that says your request has been denied. And then, of course, that gets confusing if you've already answered the request but clicked approve and not approve and close, because then people get denials when it's not really a denial. So that's why we say always pick approve and close. And I will explain kind of how it works. So you have the request, and then you have these different parts of the request underneath it. And in order for the main request to be closed, all these little requests have to be closed first. So if you have everything closed except the main request, then the whole request is not going to be closed. If you have everything closed except the expedited request, then the main request is not going to be closed, and it will time out after 10 days. That is why we say close requests, and we are working on this, fixing this to make it so it does this automatically, so you won't have to worry about it. This is a systems thing that we're going to make happen in the background. For now, though, you do need to click close request, and I will also be keeping watch so that hopefully we won't have requests closing that are already answered. So let me move on. The denial screen. Up here you can write the denial reason, and that again will be automatically included in the email. The denial email also automatically includes appeals information. And if you have a CAO in our system, then their information will show up right here. Since I was using a test agency, we don't have the information in, but for most agencies that are actual real agencies, we have that information in there, and that will show up automatically. You just need to make sure it's accurate. If you do want to copy someone in on the denial, I know some agencies, the supervisor or CAO, Chief Administrative Officer, wants to keep track of the denials, you can do that here, and it will just send as a BCC. And that is it. So denials are pretty simple. Extraordinary circumstances. Of course, there are certain extraordinary circumstances allowed by law, and those are all listed here. You can select whichever one or multiple ones apply to you. And then depending on what you pick, you will be able to select the date when they are available. So each circumstance has these time limits that it will allow you to add to the due date, and the calendar is based off of that. So if you select the decision to release a record involves legal issues, that one gives you 5 extra days, so you'll be able to select a new due date up to 5 extra days out from the current due date. We do have refer next. This, just so you know, does not actually send the request to a different agency. It just tells the requester, you need to go to a different agency. You can refer the requester to a records officer if you know a particular person, or if you know the actual agency or office, you can select it here. Search is a lot easier than the scrolling because we have every single one of our agencies in here. And then if your records don't exist, you can select that here. Or if you just want to write in a note to tell them where to go, you can do that as well. And that is a free form referral. And again, once you select one of these and click refer, the records requester will receive an email with this information. Yep. The fees are pretty cool. You can list the fees. We don't have a way of collecting the fees, so however your agency collects fees, keep doing that. That's on my wish list for the future, but of course it involves money, so it's pretty complex, and anyway, that's in the future. For now, you can list fees, and these are item fees, so if you have a particular item, you can put in the quantity of each one, and state how many you have, and it will automatically total those up right there. And as you add fees, at the top of the page, if you remember, it shows total fee for request. All the fees will be added up there and show right there at the top of the page so that you and the records requester can see them. Once you click that link at the top of the page, you will be taken here to the fee page, which shows you all the different fees and what they are for, kind of the breakdown. And I will tell you more about these tasks in a minute. We just talked about the fees right now. You can contact the requester. This just sends an email to the requester. And don't forget to put your name and agency on there in case the requester has requested multiple agencies. You do need to put your name on. But that'll just send an email, and then if the requester responds, it'll go directly to your email, so that will not be through the portal. Under the other button are some really cool little tools. The first is the tasks, and these are great because you can put in billable hours. So if you put in a task, you say it's going to be this much per hour, and then once you save it, you can actually go in and change it and say it took this many hours to do, and then that total will add to the total fee. Next, underneath the other button, we have documents. So if you do need to upload documents, you can do it under there. We are still working on this to make sure it's all working correctly. It's kind of in beta still, but it does work. So you can upload documents. Next, we have notes. So if you need to write a particular note on, maybe you called the person or did something else in the office that isn't reflected through the portal, you can add it here. You can also state whether you want the note to be visible to the requester. So if you just want it to be an internal note, you can say no. If you do want the requester to be able to see it, then you can select that option. And of course, there's a log of everything that has happened to the request. Every little action that happens is recorded here, and you can see all of that. So that is our very exciting interface. Let's see. That's just a brief overview. Again, if you do have more specific questions, you can always call us and talk to us, and we will guide you through whatever you're working with. We do have some really cool things coming in the future. We're working on customizable fields. So if your agency has specific information you always capture, like a victim name or someone's mother or father, you can add that on. We're working on customizable fee schedules too. So if you have fees that you work with, you can just stick those on there and draw from those automatically. Of course, the ability to collect fees will be wonderful someday. And then additional reporting tools and the ability to manually enter requests. So if you get requests just in paper or emailed to you, you can just put those into the portal and then track all your requests through the portal. So those we are working on for the future. We don't really have a good way of getting questions, do we?
I have questions.
Okay, great. Nova is fielding questions. I also told people to email the Open Records admin email, which
go to Fox.
And then there. Okay. Okay. So if you do have questions,
there's nothing there right now.
Nothing yet. Okay. So we do want to know if you have special records request needs. So if you need additional forms, or if you're already using an online request system, then let us know, because we have created an API so that we should be able to send our requests your way through your system. If you have questions or concerns, let us know. If you have suggestions, that's great. We love suggestions. If you like it, let us know. That's also nice to know sometimes. And online records, just going to talk a little bit about these because we don't have it up and running yet, but you will notice a button at the top of our home page that says online records. It's not active. In the future, we are going to have a way for you to take care of your records and records information through the portal. So you'll be able to see your series information and report new series or edit series you already have. And it will even have a digital records transfer for digital records. So those are coming in the future. So get excited. Now, the records officer dashboard. This we actually do have partially set up for you. And some of you probably registered for this training there. But when you log in, if you click on the dashboard and then training, you will see these options. Let me talk about them a little bit. So certification you can do online now, which is very exciting, and Nova will be going over those different tests that you can take. This is the certification page. You can see here it shows you your status, whether you are certified or not. So if you are not certified, there will be a big red circle with an X in it, and it will say not certified. And if you're certified, but your expiration date is coming up, then the expiration for your certification, then you will see a yellow circle with an exclamation point. So there's a good visual. Also, the renewal date will show right here. I have a whole year. That's very exciting. The different tests you can take show up right here. One is the GRAMA Essentials test, and the other is Records Management Essentials test. And then down here, you can see your previous results, all your scores, whether you passed, the time you started. You can reprint your certificate here at any time. So if you need to do that, you can. And then you can view your missed questions on your most recent test, not for all of them, but just the most recent one. And it will show you all the questions you missed and what your answer was. So you can take a second look at them and figure it out. We also have the way to register for training on the dashboard. So you click the register for training button and you're taken to this screen. You can sort by any of these options. So you just click up here and you can sort by location or class name or class date. And then if you want to register, you just click the button and you're registered. It's very simple, very easy. And then if you need to withdraw, you can do it just as easily. Just click the button again. We also have, if you click on dashboard and then my account, we also have the my profile button. That takes you to a page with your personal information. So your work address, your work email, your work phone, title, all of that. And you can change that yourself and save it yourself. In the future, we will have a way to do that with your agency information as well. Some of the things that we are planning for the dashboard is a way for you to be able to request training or update your agency information. CAOs will be able to verify records officers, and you'll be able to contact your analyst and tons of other stuff we are working on. Okay, we got a question. I think it's awesome that it shows you the ones you missed, but how do you know what the correct response should have been? That is a very good question, and one I wondered as well. You have to actually look it up, just kind of look it up. We're working on making references available with each question, putting the reference on so you'll be able to see where you need to go to find the answer. If you're ever not sure of one of the answers or question one of the answers, you can let us know. I did that the other day. I took the test and questioned a lot of the answers and sent it to the analyst supervisor. I think she was really pleased with all my annoying questions. Yeah. But yeah, you have to figure it out. It's kind of a, yes. So, okay, so we do have, this was all orchestrated, the legislation and everything through the Transparency Board with their guidance, and we report to them whenever they have a meeting. So if you have concerns about the portal or about online records or any of this stuff, then please feel free to talk to them too. They actually like hearing from people who handle records and know what's going on, rather than just whoever happens to come to a Transparency Board meeting. So please talk to them, talk to us, give us feedback. We love it. Here's our contact information, which we will make this available online, so you'll be able to see that. And the analyst information up. We're not having a 5-minute break. That's for our live trainings. So that is my section of the training. Now I am going to pass the microphone over to Nova, who is going to go through the rest of the training. So just a moment here.
Okay, good morning. My name is Nova Dubovic. I'm the Executive Secretary to the State Records Committee, and I also work with Renee on the Open Records portal. I'm one of her little minions that works in the background with her. So today we are excited to tell you about 2 paths for records officer certification that is tailored for the duties and responsibilities you perform. And prior to this new initiative, there was only one way a records officer could certify annually, and that was by taking the Records Access or GRAMA certification, whether you handled GRAMA requests or not. So before we get it ahead of ourselves, let's just go over some basic responsibilities. So if you are a Chief Administrative Officer, let me get rid of this little red dot. If you're a Chief Administrative Officer, your responsibilities include establishing a records management program, appointing records officers, and ensure that they are certified annually. If you are a records officer, your responsibilities may include care and maintenance, scheduling and disposal, classification and designation, providing access to records, and preserving records. Now, the State Archives recognizes that many governmental entities divide these responsibilities among different records officers. For example, some records officers are responsible for the care and maintenance and scheduling of records, but not for classifying or providing access to records. And then some records officers only classify records and respond to GRAMA requests. I'd have to say that most records officers probably have both responsibilities. One responsibility that cannot be shared or redistributed is certifying annually. And according to the Utah Code 63G-2-108, every records officer must do this, except the records officers of the legislature and courts. Up to now, there has been one certification option. That's online materials and testing designed to educate records officers regarding records access and the provisions of GRAMA. So you're probably all familiar with this screen. So now there are 2 paths to certification: a training that focuses on records access and a training that focuses on records management. Both certification tests will be available to every records officer. Records officers responsible only for GRAMA requests must take the records access certification test. Records officers who have only records management responsibilities are not responsible for responding to GRAMA requests, may certify by taking the records management certification test. And then records officers who have both responsibilities, unfortunately, may certify by taking the records access certification test the first time, and therefore may certify by taking the records management and records access certification test alternately every other year. So the first path that we discussed is records access certification test, fondly known as GRAMA. If you are familiar with GRAMA, this will be a quick overview of the certification material. If you are not familiar with records access certification, then this will provide an opportunity to compare and contrast and decide which certification most represents the duties and responsibilities that you hold. So the first track is for records officers who are responsible only for GRAMA requests, or for GRAMA requests. You must take the records access certification test. If your responsibilities include responding to GRAMA requests, classifying records, disclosing public, private, protected, and controlled records, then you will need to take the records access certification. And it is important before beginning the test to go ahead and download the training material and also the GRAMA law so you can go through it as you're taking the test. This presentation on the records access certification, again, is just an overview. It's not training. But if this is part of your duties, I highly suggest that you attend an in-person GRAMA or records access certification training in person, at least annually, because the legislature meets every year and they make changes to the law, and you would need to know what those changes are. So in the certification test, it is broken down into 6 sections that reflect the contents of the law. And the test can be retaken as many times as needed to obtain a passing score. However, it must be noted that the last 4 sections, that's in section 6, they contain 4 sections of the law that you do not need to know to pass the test. And we highly advise that you look those over and become familiar with them on your own. So just to begin with, the law, it outlines the legislative intent in the beginning, and it informs us that the purpose of this act is to promote the public's right to easy access to public records and at the same time prevent abuse of confidentiality by governmental entities by permitting the confidential treatment of some records. So really, the purpose is to provide guidelines for both disclosure and restrictions that are based on the equitable weighing of the relevant interests in which are consistent with the nationwide standards and practices. And in further, it establishes fair and reasonable records management practices. Within the general provision, there are a list of 30 definitions. They're all in alphabetical order. These are words that you will find throughout the law that you use in the legal capacity and need to be defined to understand the context of how they're used in the law. One example is person. You will see person peppered throughout the law, and you wonder, what does person mean? Well, it means individual, nonprofit, or profit corporation, partnership, a sole proprietorship, business organization, or any combination of those above. In addition to the legislative intent and definitions, there's also 3 other sections that are in the general provisions. The confidentiality agreement, which provides guidance on contracts. Records of security measures. These are things that are not subject to GRAMA. You wouldn't disclose passwords or combinations or things like that about your building or your work area. And lastly, the certification of records officers, and that was addressed earlier. So in section 2 of the training, as a records officer whose responsibility is to respond to GRAMA requests, section 2 is probably the most important section that you need to understand and be able to apply to your duties. This section delineates the access rights to government records, who has the right to inspect records, what restrictions exist, and who has rights to access those restricted records. And then also how to properly assess fees, time limits to respond to GRAMA requests, and different responses to include denying a request, extraordinary circumstances, and then also the process in which you provide the requester the right to appeal a denial. If you've ever asked yourself who has the right to inspect a record, that answer is in section 2. Every person has the right to inspect records and receive copies during normal working hours. Governmental entity is not required to create a record unless it doesn't interfere with their governmental duties and responsibilities, and the requester agrees to a fee. And then the government may not use physical form, electronic or otherwise, in which a record is stored to hinder the rights of a person to inspect and receive a copy of a record. It also identifies who you can disclose records to. So private records are disclosed to the subject of the record, parent or legal guardian, or someone with a power of attorney. Controlled records can be released to a physician, psychologist, certified social worker, insurance provider, or producer. And let's see, protected records are provided to the person who submitted the record or has the power of attorney or court ordered. And then the most important thing is do not release a record without verifying the identity of the requester. So when a records officer receives a GRAMA request, he or she has 10 business days after the receipt to respond, and we have 4 ways that you can respond within the law. You can approve and provide the record. You can deny partial or whole access to the record. You can notify the requester the governmental entity does not maintain the record and provide a reference to whom may maintain that record, if you do know, or notify the requester of that you're claiming extraordinary circumstances. Also in Access to Records Section 2, you have fees, denials, sharing records, and subpoenas. So for fees, we'll just discuss this a little bit. It talks about how to access and apply them, assess and apply them. It talks about governmental entity may charge a reasonable fee to cover the cost of providing a record. And it's also important for the political subdivision to establish a fee schedule to provide the public on how much it will cost to provide records. Of course, GRAMA highly encourages governmental entities to fulfill a request without charge, and is encouraged to do so when it determines the release would benefit the public or the requester's rights are directly impacted. Denials. It talks about how to properly notify a requester of a denial. It outlines what information needs to be in the notification letter, such as the right to appeal, the description and corresponding citations as far as what records you are denying, and the time limits for appealing to the Chief Administrative Officer, which is 30 days, and then the name and business address of the Chief Administrative Officer. Let's see here. This here is just a simplified process chart of when you receive a GRAMA request, you have to 10 business days, and then you do your determination, and then you notify the requester. If you have approved it, then you're good to go, it's complete, or if you deny. And if you deny, then you go on to the next, and then you notify the requester. They have the right to appeal the decision to the Chief Administrative Officer, and then you would provide all this information in your notification letter. So for sharing records, governmental entities who share records with other governmental entities, this is a really long section and complex in the law, but I highly suggest that you read it. The biggest thing is to have an agreement between the governmental entities on how they should handle those records and the classification, and just ensure that they don't release those records to individuals that do not have authorization for those records. So you can take a look at that. And then also in Section 2 is subpoenas. This is probably the section that is most confusing to a lot of agencies and difficult to understand. Subpoenas and other methods of discovery, they're not GRAMA requests and must be processed completely differently. A subpoena is a judicial process, and a GRAMA request is an administrative process. And a person can request the same records under both processes, and it's not considered a duplicate. There's actually a records committee decision. It's Phillips versus West Valley, I believe, and it is case number 14-04. So if you're interested in reading up on that, you can take a look at that. It's on our website under the State Records Committee decisions and rules. Okay, so Section 3 is classifications. We have public, private, controlled, and protected. And what is important to take away from this is that records are either public and available for everyone to inspect and copy, or records are private, controlled, protected under GRAMA, and disclosure is restricted, or access is governed by a court rule, another state statute, federal statute, or federal regulation. And this section goes over all of that. So public records are considered open meeting minutes, financial records, initial contact reports, government contracts, all records not specifically restricted. And this is not an exhaustive list. Private records and controlled records. So if you work a lot with private and controlled records, I always think it helps to think of them as about individuals. But the disclosure, of course, and the restrictions are vastly different between the two of them. Private records have medical history, performance evaluations, library records that identify a patron. Nobody can go to the library and pull what books you have checked out. Employee personal contact information. They cannot provide your personal home phone number or email. And then kind of a default is any clearly unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. So if you're just not sure, then you can use that one. Controlled records, medical, psychiatric, or psychological data about individuals. They're not to be released because they could be detrimental to the subject of the record or safety of people around that subject, either at work or at home. And then also the release violates medical ethics. Protected records. There's 65 protected records, and every year the legislature adds another protected record to the list. I find these to be common sense after you kind of go over them, but bids for contracts, trade secrets, test questions, drafts, attorney-client privilege, these are all considered protected records, and there's a whole list of them. Think of it as records release could interfere with government process such as an audit, an exam, investigation, or a trial. So Section 4 is appeals. Now, not all records officers work with appeals or have the opportunity to sit in on a committee hearing. However, it's important to familiarize yourself with the process because it impacts the records access decisions made at the records officers level and also the chief administrative level. The requester has the right to appeal to the governmental entity's decision, and it outlines in Section 4 those provisions. First, the appeal would go to the chief administrative officer. Then if the political subdivision has a local appeals board established, the appeal would then go to the local appeals board. If you do not have a local appeals board established, then the requester would appeal to the State Records Committee or to district court. And then here's just another process chart where here we start with the chief administrative officer. They have 5 business days to respond from receipt of the appeal. They do their determination. They notify the requester of their decision, approve, deny. They deny. They notify the requester of their right to appeal. And these are the provisions that should be in the letter. Again, if they have a local appeals board that's been established, then the requester would appeal to the local appeals board, and then they could appeal to the State Records Committee or to district court. If you do not have a local appeals board established, then the requester would appeal either to district court or to the State Records Committee. And then, of course, due to limited time, because we can't be here for a long time today, Section 5, I'm just going to briefly state that it's part of Part 7 in the law, and it contains information on political subdivisions and their ability to adopt ordinances and policies to comply with the statute. It outlines what information should be written into the ordinance and policies. It talks about the local appeals board configuration, and it's just a really good section that you need to take a look at, and it's also on the test. Section 6, as I said earlier, it has 4 parts, the last 4 parts that are not included in the test, and they just outline, it's basically the State Records Committee's duties and configuration, collection of information and accuracy of records, remedies, which is a provision which defines criminal penalties and liabilities associated with GRAMA, and then public associations. Those are not on the test, but I highly encourage you to take a look at those if you think they pertain to you. Okay, so as a records officer, if you perform any of these duties that we just mentioned in the records access certification and your responsibility is to respond to GRAMA requests, or classify information, then you must take the Records Access Certification Test. It is a requirement that records officers who work with GRAMA requests be familiar and understand the Government Records Access and Management Act. If what is contained in the Records Access Certification does not fall into the realm of your responsibilities and duties as a records officer, then we can go ahead and take a look at this new path to records management certification that I think you'll like. And this might be a better option and can be taken in lieu of the Records Access Certification Test. So, Renee, are there any questions?
Nope.
Nope, no questions. Okay, well, then we'll just move right along. Okay, so here at the Archives, we create a new training that focuses on records management because records officers who are not assigned the duty of responding to GRAMA requests felt that the records access and GRAMA training feels mostly irrelevant to them. But they still had to certify. By creating this second certification training and test that concentrates on records management, records officers not handling GRAMA requests can now comply in a way that benefits them and I think makes it feel more relevant to what their duties and responsibilities are. However, if you respond to requests, GRAMA requests, and maintain records, then both tests can be taken, again, in alternating years. So one of the biggest challenges of developing the Records Management Essentials training was deciding what should and should not be in the new training. There is a plethora of literature about records management best practices, and although we felt obligated to discuss the legal aspects of records management, we also want to talk about the practical benefits to you and to your agency. And we wanted to offer helpful and accomplishable instructions, just not, lofty ideas. So Section 1 of the training focuses on GRAMA, or government records laws, both GRAMA and the Public Records Management Act, or PRMA. And these laws contain definitions, a warning, and descriptions of duties associated with maintaining government records and who the duties belong to. The definitions in GRAMA answer questions like these. They can help you determine whether something is a record or not and can explain what record series, record copies, and retention schedules are. So you can take a look at those. The Public Management Act, PRMA, provides warnings by making it clear that records are property of the state, meaning that their maintenance is governed by statute, not left up to the discretion of the government employees. The law states, do not intentionally mutilate, destroy, damage, or dispose of records contrary to properly adopted retention schedules. And if you break this law, it's a Class B misdemeanor. This can be positively stated. Records must be maintained and must remain accessible for the duration of their approved retention periods. The Public Records Management Act also outlines the legal responsibilities and duties of governmental entities, the Chief Administrative Officer, and appointed records officers in particular. And we discussed these at the beginning of this presentation, but the law also outlines the legal responsibilities and duties of the Division of Archives and Record Service, or state archives, which include administering the state archives and records management program, establishing standards and develop training, preparing retention schedules, and serving as the official repository for historical records. Training focuses on principles of establishing a records management program. You definitely don't want your records to look like this in storage. But this is what you want it to look like. Not so much the legal requirements for establishing a records management program, but the business case, the benefits that you and your agency will enjoy if you successfully implement a records management program. Be all clean like this room. Okay, so the final section of the training focuses on 10 practical steps that can help you implement retention schedules in order to manage your records. These include finding and understanding your retention schedules, inventorying your records and getting staff feedback on how they are actually managed, and then comparing the reality with what is in the retention schedules so that you can update your retention schedules and your processes. And then the final steps are about educating your colleagues and enlisting their aid, organizing your records, and then transferring records as necessary, or destroying those that should go, based on your retention schedule. Now, the most important thing that we took into consideration as we developed this training is what I like to call points of pain. And these are questions that we receive, or just gaps in the understanding that become evident as we assist agencies. And I'd like to cover just a few of those common misconceptions here. So one clarification that the training makes is to explain the two types of retention schedules. One type is general schedule, which is created for the common record groups, such as accounts payable records or meeting minutes. General retention schedules have already been approved by the State Records Committee and are available for immediate use. When a governmental entity has records that are not described in the general retention schedule, or if they want to keep the records for more or less time than is specified by the general retention schedule, they're unique. Then they, with the help of your records analyst that you work with at the archives, can submit a series-specific retention schedule to the State Records Committee for approval. And this is what it looks like. Once a series-specific retention schedule has been approved, it carries the same mandate for compliance as the general retention schedules do, so it's law. So another point of pain that the training addresses is the significance of a record copy. Because records can be duplicated in order to create reference copies, access copies, backup copies, preservation copies, the law isolates the legal requirements for maintaining the records to only the record copy. So your agency chooses which copy is the record copy, and then they commit to maintaining the record copy for the duration of the scheduled retention. They manage all copies of the record, preserve the record copy in a way that makes it accessible and authentic, and disposes of the record according to the scheduled disposition. There are common misunderstandings about what records are. If you don't print it off and hold it in your hands, is it still a record? Well, yes. You have social media content that relates to government business. That's a record and must be treated as such. Emails and instant messages that relate to work are records. Even personal emails that are sent and received using your work email become subject to discovery. This is why we suggest that you use a personal account for personal email, or forward personal emails to a personal account and delete them from your work account. And then databases are not records, but the information contained in the database is a record. So some people use the term database when referring to the information itself. A database system is like a cupboard used to store and organize documents or to aggregate tables of data. But a database is not a records management system, and it is not its responsibility. So it's not the database's responsibility to ensure that the records are retained correctly. It is mandated throughout the law that each state governmental agency establish record retention schedules for any electronic records created or received in electronic transaction. The data held in an agency's database documents, among other things, business functions and transactions, and may, therefore, it could be a record. Records officers need to have an understanding of what information is contained in their databases, and then, of course, how to manage it. Part of managing electronic records requires establishing plans for reformatting, plans for migrating data, especially electronic records that have a retention period of 10 years or longer. Platforms expire, become obsolete, and plans for record storage in order to store it less expensively once the records are no longer accessed frequently. Another source of confusion that we run into with records officers is understanding the two different facilities that the State Archives manages and the very different functions that they serve. One facility is the State Records Center, which is an off-site storage facility up in Clearfield. This is for the inactive records, meaning they are used less than once a month, but the retention has yet not been met. No cost to the agency for storing your records at this facility. Custody of the records is retained by the governmental entity, so the archives does not take custody of those records. And the agency may request records from the record center and then return the records to the record center when finished. So they are still your responsibility. When transferring records of historical value that have met their retention and that have a disposition of transfer to the state archives or permanent, you will send them to the state archives, which is located here in downtown Salt Lake City, and we are located just south of the Rio Grande building. Custody of these records is held by the Utah Division of Archives and Record Services, which means the state records becomes responsible for preserving, caring for, storing, and providing access to the records. We take custody of those records. And records are available for use in the Archives Research Center and online in many cases. So if you wanted access to the records, you would have to go then to the Research Center to access them. A common misconception among records officers has to do with the essential part of implementing a records retention program, that of destroying all records regardless of the format, that have a disposition of destroy when the retention has been met. When the retention stated on the retention schedules do not only indicate the minimum amount of time that a record should be kept, they also indicate the point at which a record should be disposed of. All copies of records should be destroyed at the same time as the record copy, regardless of the format. So if you have 3 copies of that record in your office, if it needs to be destroyed based on the retention schedule, then you need to destroy all 3 of them. So I hope in providing the second path to certification will make your job easier by providing more relevant and practical guidance. We'd love to know what other ways we can make your job easier. If you have any questions or suggestions, please contact us. We'd love your feedback. Renee, do we have any questions? Okay. Here are your records analysts. Kendra Yates is the manager up there in records analyst section. You have Ray Gifford, Lori Ann Outerkirk, Rebecca Shaw. We also have a blog here, Records Keepers, and you can register for that and get weekly, monthly updates. So highly encourage you to do that. Here again is the GRAMA specialist, Renee, who is by my side, myself, Nova, and then Rosemary, who's our government records ombudsman. So if there are no questions, I'd like to say thank you and have a great rest of your week.